All right, today we're going to look at plant tissue systems and the parts of the plant. You should be on page 7 of your note booklet, and the top half is going to be the tissues and the bottom half is going to be the plant parts. I don't have mine with me. This is a emergency recorded lesson. I was going to go through all of this with you in person as a class, but some issues with my garage door have made it so that I have to work on it tomorrow with my father. So I'm not sick. I have home issues, you know, just that kind of thing. So please make sure you're reading the directions on that page. I believe what it says is just to identify, define what's happening at each tissue system and or plant part, and then to illustrate that through some kind of picture. There are 3 tissue systems in a plant. We have multiple tissue systems as well, and it's just the function that they're going to do. So when a bunch of cells work together, they form a tissue. When a bunch of tissues work together, they form an organ. When organs get together, they form organ systems, and then the organ systems form the whole organism. So we're going to look at the tissues, the specific tissues that make up plants. The first one is dermal tissue, and maybe you've heard of the term derm before, but dermal is going to be the skin, so it's that outer layer. And if you look on this image over here, it's all of the blue, the light blue color. That's the dermal tissue. It's that outermost layer. It's protective, and it's going to form the skin called the epidermis. We also have an epidermis. In plants, some of them, they're going to have a cuticle, and some of them are going to have a thicker cuticle than others, and that's going to allow them to live in a drier environment. You may have noticed plants with a thick cuticle often kind of look fake when you're looking at them. You're like, is this a real plant? But it is, in fact. It just has a really thick cuticle, which you can kind of see here, this lighter color. And that's going to allow it to hold in moisture better, and this is good for dry environments. Then the ground tissue system, all you really need to know about that is it's going to offer support. It's going to be filler. And you can see that in the yellow on all of the pictures here. So this yellow tissue there, that is the ground tissue. And in fruits, that's going to be the flesh of the fruit. So when you bite into an apple, the white inner piece is the ground tissue. The vascular system we've talked a lot about before. This is where water and nutrients go through. So to be a vascular plant, you have to have this vascular tissue system. And there are 2 very important types of cells that are in the vascular tissue system. They are the xylem, which moves water and minerals from the roots to the stems of the leaves, through the stems to the leaves. This is the xylem here. So you can notice the direction of movement is only up. So it's pulling stuff from the roots and it's moving it up. The way that I remember the difference between the 2 for xylem is that xylem moves water, and water starts with a W and xylem starts with XY. So I think WXY, those all kind of go together. So water, xylem. The phloem is the tissue that's the cells that are going to make up the tissue that moves sugars and stuff through the plant. This can go in either direction, but primarily it's going to come from the source, which is the cells in the leaf, and it's going to pull it through that to take it elsewhere into the plant. And it's going to be, stored in, if it's like a radish, it'll take that down to the roots to be stored in that place, which we call wherever the storage place is, a sink. If it's going to be something like an apple tree, that's going to go to that fruit, right? That's where it's going to be stored. So the phloem basically moves food. So the way that I remember that is that food flows through the phloem. That's all kind of that alliteration. Those were the 3 tissue systems in a plant. Now the last thing we're going to look at here are the types of the parts of the plant, and these should be very familiar to you all, as most people know what a root, a stem, and a leaf is. Roots are important because they're going to absorb water and mineral nutrients from the soil, and they're also going to be able to store stuff like sugars and starches. And we eat a lot of root plants. If you think about the activity that you did today with the parts of the plant that we consume, quite a few of them are roots, and we really don't give enough credit to those and really think about, like, I'm eating a root. If it is a monocot plant, their root is going to be fibrous, so it's going to be branched out like that. If it is a dicot, it's a taproot system, so they're going to have one really thick, solid root as that primary root. Stems are really important because they're going to support the leaves and they're going to house all that vascular tissue. So they're the main kind of highway that the water and the food are going to flow through to get to the places in the plant that they need it. And that's pretty much their main function, is transport of nutrients and stuff. And then the last part of the plant that we're going to look at are the leaves. The leaves are really important because this is where photosynthesis occurs. Plants have to have leaves or some kind of modified leaf to be able to perform photosynthesis, to make the glucose, to produce the food for itself. There are many different types of leaves. You can see here they're going to have different types of veins. Remember, net-like is the dicot and parallel veins are monocots, but they're going to have various shapes and the way that they are arranged, the types of edges they have. And a lot of times a plant will be identified based on the leaves. So if you ever, when I talk about like buying a house and having to identify the plants that are around, like the tree in my front yard, I had to use the leaves as a method of identification. So leaves are very important as they contain the chlorophyll and they're going to help with photosynthesis. That is the end of our notes.